It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the April 18, 2016 Transportation and Traffic, or the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. Roll call, Commissioner Witcher. Here. Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner White. Not here. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Commissioner George.
Here.
Commissioner Yockel.
Here.
Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the March 21st, 2016 meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hale to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any discussion? We have a motion to approve the minutes of March 21st, 2016 from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? I'm sorry? Okay. You can
As
still
was
vote.
I.
Still vote on the minutes. Yep, still vote on the minutes. And Mr. George. Did you already say yes?
I'm not sure if they're correct or not. I wasn't here.
Okay. All right, we got it. All right, report on license and traffic and record.
Afternoon, Commissioners. It's been a few months since I've seen y'all. All right, we're on the first quarter, and this report is for the month of March. So, taxis, I had 29 new, 21 renews. I had 1 exempt on the driver's permits, 15 inspections on cars, 1 failed, 1 complaint, 2 investigations. Limousines had 7 new, 3 renewed. Vehicles had 1 passed, 1 fail. Carriages had 2 new, 1 renewed. Pedicabs, 2 renewed. Shuttles, 10 new, 4 new, and 5 passed. Have any questions?
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion concerning the consent docket? Well, let me ask first, is anybody here to speak against an item on the consent docket? Okay, let me have a motion concerning the consent docket, please.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Witcher to approve it. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on the consent docket? Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent docket by Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5A, StarCab LLC, to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from StarCab LLC to operate 150 vehicles in taxi service. Anybody here to speak on item 5A? Okay. Sir, can I have your name, your address? You have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out a green form when you're done, please.
Good afternoon. Speaking on behalf of the owner of the StarCab LLC, my name is Abdulaziz Bilali. Address is 409 Northwest 140th Street, Edmond, Oklahoma. Just change of name of the ownership, and that's it.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we have staff input, please.
Okay, you've got a completed application before you, as the applicant mentioned. The reason why this is being presented is because the way our codes are structured, in the event that a taxi company changes ownership, then its application, or an application to operate a cab company under that name, would have to be considered by the Commission. And beyond that, you've got a completed application before you, and would recommend approval as presented.
Do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
Move approval of the
We
application.
have a motion to approve from Commissioner George. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Littlefield. Any discussion on item 5A? We have a motion to approve 5A from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. Sir, if you can come on up and get the actual paperwork so you can go ahead and start processing. Thank you. We go on now to item 5B, Thunder Executive Services, LLC, to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from Thunder Executive Services, LLC, to operate 20 vehicles in limousine service. Anybody here to speak on item 5B? Okay. Sir, if I can have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out one of those forms when we're done. When you're done, please.
My name is Felix Pinto, 6628 Laurel Road, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73162, my address. We're applying for limousine services. We do photography professionally. We have encountered that it would enhance our business to add to the photography business limo services.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else to speak on item 5B? Okay, we have staff input, please.
You've just got a completed application for a new limousine company to operate 5 vehicles, and staff is recommending approval of the item. 20, I'm sorry, vehicles. And staff is recommending approval of the item as it's presented. Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Hale, and do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any discussion on 5B? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. Votes, please. Item is approved. Sir, if you could come up and get your paperwork, please. Okay, we go on to 5C. Call Schaefer and Traffic Management Division to consider request to 1, change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between Northwest Expressway, which is also State Highway 3, and West Britton Road from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. 2, change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between West Britton Road and West Hefner Road from 40 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. 3, change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between West Hefner Road and West Memorial Road from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Or, item 4, change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between West Britton Road and West Hefner Road from 40 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Do we have anybody here to speak on item 5C? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got extensive comments before you on this particular item. The one thing I want to point out is that in '99, the Commission had a request to reduce the speed limit on Rockwell Avenue, and that was in the section between Britton Road and Hefner. And at the time, there was a view obstruction at a street called Castle Road. And since that time, when we got this request and started working on it, we worked with staff over at the Parks Department, and they did some trimming of some cedar trees. They removed a few, and they cut back the limbs, and this would be on the south side of this particular road. And what that did was it remedied the existing view obstruction. So at this point in time, that intersection will meet the sight distance requirements based on a 45 mile an hour speed limit. Our studies show that the 85th percentile, the running speed consistently from the expressway up to Memorial Road, typically runs in the neighborhood of about 43 through 48 miles per hour. So in this particular case, we're getting actually very good compliance with posted limit being 45. It would make sense at this particular time, rather than reduce the speed limit to something that's more than 11 miles an hour below what has been the averaged 85th percentile speed of 46, to actually bump the speed limit up between Britton and Hefner in accordance with the way most drivers are traveling on this road. So our recommendation would be not to approve parts 1 through 3, but we'd ask for your consideration of part 4, which would be to normalize the speed limit on Rockwell, because this will give us a consistent limit from the corporate limits of the city of Bethany, which is at 63rd Street, all the way to Memorial. And then once you get north of Memorial Road, the speed limit increases on Rockwell. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
I will move to disapprove items 1, 2, and 3, but approve item 4 as per staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Wisher to disapprove sub-items 1, 2, and 3, and to approve item 4 as per staff recommendation. Do we have a second on that motion? We have a second from Commissioner Hale. Do we have any discussion on this item? Yes, sir.
But the only comment I'd make is that living in that area, having had 2 daughters that attended Putnam City North, it's from Hefner up to Putnam City North High School, which is roughly halfway up to 122nd. There's it's a very busy area, a couple of supermarkets, and a lot of traffic in there. It doesn't appear to be smart in terms of just keeping speeds consistent all the way up or available within the item that's before us. But if we were going to do anything, I'd say that taking that stretch from Hefner to 122nd, reducing that speed to 40 might be helpful with the high level of traffic, especially when high school kids are coming and going. But having made that comment, I'll stick with my motion.
Okay, anybody else want to talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Witcher to disapprove sub-items 1, 2, and 3, and approve item 4 as per staff recommendation. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Item 5D, staff.
Okay, we had a request from the applicant to have this item continued to the next meeting. So at this point in time, we just recommend the commission continue the item to May.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5D? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield to defer item 5D till the May meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Witcher. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion from
Can we
Commissioner...
clarify the motion, please?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Can we clarify the motion, please?
Okay. The motion from Commissioner Littlefield is to defer
And can
item
he clarify from till when?
till the May meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I thought I said that. I'm sorry. Oh, he didn't? Oh, okay. Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield to defer item 5D to the May meeting, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. There's no discussion on it. So can I have your votes, please? All right, item is approved. Okay, and now we go on to item 5E, Brian Fitzsimmons, AIA, President Fitzsimmons Architects, Inc., to consider requests to, 1, change the speed limit on Northwest 23rd Street between North Clausen Boulevard and North Robinson Avenue from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour, and 2, change the speed limit on Northwest 23rd Street between North Robinson Avenue and North Broadway Avenue from 35 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. Yes, sir. If I can have your name, your address, and make sure you fill out one of those blue forms, please. Green.
Brian Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. And I guess I've become the sacrificial pedestrian for 23rd. So here I am again. I guess for clarity, the request was for 20 or 25, and I understand staff looked at it as the most extreme example of 20, and 25 would be a more realistic request that we would hopefully shoot for by the end of this discussion. And with that, I maybe should have the staff report go ahead and go.
So we'll hold on you then, staff, if you want to go ahead.
All right, you've got our comments before you. In preparation of this item, we did do a series of speed studies. We collected speed data on the sections of Northwest 23rd Street between Classen and Western, between Lee and Dewey, and between Hudson and Harvey. Our speed studies found that the 85th percentile speed between Classen and Western was running at 32 miles an hour. It was 35 miles an hour between Lee and Dewey, and it was 34 between Hudson and Harvey. This particular roadway, we also did a little bit more analysis, and on the bottom of page 3 of the staff report, you'll see that we've got some percentage breakdowns of the vehicles and how they're traveling. Currently, if you're looking at a speed limit of 25 miles an hour, you'll see that that's the first of the 4 columns listed, and we show that about 62% of vehicles currently are traveling 25 or less between Classen and Western, and then when you get to Lee and Dewey, you're running down at 14%, and between Hudson and Harvey, you've got like 24% of the vehicles are running at that speed. Whereas if you bump up to 30 miles an hour, you'll see that between Classen and Western, you're running 78% of the vehicles are running at or below the posted speed limit, and then 58% and 65% between Lee and Dewey, and then Harvey and Hudson, respectively. We also ran a Bella Light credible speed study on this particular corridor, and based on the structure of the road, the layout of parking, the presence of driveways, and that sort of thing, This particular street would score about 160 points, which gives it in the neighborhood of having a credible speed limit of at least 31 miles an hour. That 31 is based on a study that actually came out of Canada, so they were using metric speed limits, but 30 be the closest reasonable speed limit for this corridor based on how it's structured. And that would correspond fairly accurately with the 85th percentiles that we've watched. As Mr. Fitzsimmons noted, we've got this item presented for a request to reduce it to 20 miles an hour because his letter is 20 or 25, and the reason for presenting it at 20 is it gives the commission the ability to take a lesser action than so we had to present it with a more extreme speed limit, or the maximum speed limit reduction, so the commission could consider an alternative to that if it desired, which would be a lesser action. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but at this point in time, based on our observations of the roadway, we just wouldn't be in a position to support a change, which we don't think that most drivers will adhere to.
All right, thank you. Sir?
Yeah, so I understand the 85 percentile and what drivers are comfortable. I've kind of read up on that a little bit. A couple of things that are I would like to at least point out is, again, the 25 mile per hour I think is probably a realistic approach. And what I find interesting is that as you head east from Classen, that is where the traffic actually speeds up, which is actually where the road gets more congested and also more parallel parking and more pedestrians. So that's interesting that drivers feel comfortable driving faster where it's less safe to drive faster. And so it seems logical to at least, on your point test, it was 160 points, which is on the high end of that, coming to 25 miles per hour or 30 miles per hour. So it would also flex to possibly 28 miles per hour if that was prorated somehow. So I'd like to appeal that we try the 25 miles per hour to at least slow the traffic down, and also perhaps deal with the psychology of a lot of frustration along that roadway is the non-protected left turns and the design of the roadway. And I have a sense, at least when I'm driving down it, that people try to speed up to get past things, and they are only comfortable speeding up to the 35, which is 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. If we post it at 25, maybe they'll only go up to 30 miles per hour, and we'd be where the point test recommended that it be.
And, all right, is there anything else, sir?
That's the main thing.
Okay. All right, so we have staff input, comment. Anybody else have comments concerning item 5E? All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
Mr. Chairman, I do move that we approve a change in speed limit from 23rd on 23rd Street between Classen and Robinson from 30 to 25 miles per hour, and change the speed limit on 23rd between Robinson and Broadway from 35 to 30. I think that seems more reasonable considering the...
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to modify sub-item 1 to make it 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, and modify item 2 to make it from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. Right, sir? That's your motion? Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any discussion on item 5E? Yes,
Observations. I agree with Brian's sense about the design of the roadway, that it's, I don't know if people accelerate expressly to get around, but it seems kind of that there's a lot of people turning left in front of you, no matter which way you're going, and a lot of going into the right lane. I suspect that the reason that the 85th percentile speed is lower between Classen and Western is just the fact that you've got a stoplight and then another signal light. You just can't generate that much speed generally. But I think that a consistent 30 miles an hour could be advisable all the way across, but I don't think we'll change the driver behavior just by taking the speed limit down and hoping that the people will obey it.
Well, I just think this goes along with all the stuff being built in that area, right, sir? Is that now all these things are going to be opening, there's going to be a lot more traffic in and out, a lot more people walking across and doing things.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other talk on item 5E? Yes, sir.
My concern has to do with the study out of Canada, that this really has to do with driver expectation. Is that correct?
It's really a measure of driver response. I mean, what it is, it's, driving is very much it's a reflection of how a person operating a motor vehicle responds to the built environment. I mean, you provide a roadway that, the way, if you look at the parameters included in the study, it's indicating that in the absence of a lot of curb cuts, a nice wide road section, that sort of thing, the drivers will naturally have a tendency to run at higher speeds than they will under maybe different conditions where you've got like a myriad of driveways, maybe a really tightly packed corridor, something along that line. Because we've used this method when we evaluated speeds on streets like Pebblestone Parkway, which is kind of in the northwestern part of the city. It's a divided roadway, but it runs through a residential area, but along both sides of the right-of-way, it's basically it's lined with trees and a continuous line of fences. I think it's like a brick wall type fence. And the running speeds on that street are considerably higher than the posted limit, but that's a driver response to the environment that was built for them. So that's really what this study does, is it kind of gives you, and even in its name it talks about it as being a means of setting a credible speed limit. And so when using this, which is, it's not an absolute science because, everyone will respond differently to what they're presented with. But it's been fairly reflective and fairly accurate for a lot of roads that we've tested it on. So based on that, that's why this particular section of 23rd Street would lend itself to a speed limit somewhere in the neighborhood of 30.
That's my concern, is that even if we do drop it down to 25 or even 20, if the driver expectation for that driver is a higher speed limit, they're going to be driving at the higher speed, just like on Pebblestone. I mean, we can post it, but if driver expectation, if they look at the road and the road appears to be at a higher speed than what is posted, generally they're driving more than what the posted speed limit is.
But the drivers are driving 35, at least in this particular observation now, which is higher than the current speed limit. And so if we can make it enforceable where they drive what it should be at 30.
That's true, but enforceable means you're going to have an officer on site to enforce it.
Well, if I understood, the greatest percentage of drivers are at or below 30 miles an hour for all of the sections where the speed study was done. Is that right, Stuart?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, yeah, if you go back to the table 1 on page 3, you'll see when we got total percent at or below 30 miles an hour, you can see that, it runs anywhere from 58%, which is the low percentage, which means there's a higher number of drivers that are going above 30 in that section between Lee and Dewey than there are. Then there's, over at Class and Western, you've got fewer drivers that are driving in excess of 30. But you'll also notice the top speed that was collected during the study was, now granted there were always outliers to every study, but all our top speeds were surprisingly, more than 10 miles over the limit. Which, when you consider a corridor like Northwest 23rd Street, which is relatively congested, typically, when there are opportunities to go faster, there are some drivers that will just exercise that opportunity. Now, if you were to jump back and look at some of the other things that we've done, in the previous case, when we were looking at changing the speed limit on Rockwell Avenue, we did a follow-up study on a section of MacArthur Boulevard. And that was bumped down from 45 to 40 at the commission's meeting last year. And we did a follow-up study just to give the commission a sense as to what kind of changes might happen. And in one section, the 85th percentile went up in spite of the fact that the regulatory limit was dropped by 5 miles an hour. So like I said, Our observation is that people do have a tendency to respond to the built environment. And in this particular case, 30 miles an hour is, really in line with most people's expectations.
Yeah, the Bellahite model, if you will, was developed to set speed limits where you don't necessarily have to do a speed study. I mean, that's how it was correlated with. So you could go in and a municipality could check their urban system and see what they ought to be based on that model. But nothing's more accurate than a spot speed study to determine what the actual speed on the facility is. I mean, you got to get, that is the most accurate method. Their method was just and they only correspond about 83% of the time, which is pretty good. In this case, it was 28, you got 32, right, on the 85th? So they're probably going to be a little one way or the other. But that's what I got from that Bellahite method. Any municipality could use that and go take an arterial and say, well, let's see what the speed limit ought to be based on this method. Or do we want to go out here and do spot speed studies every quarter of a mile just to see what it's doing? That's a little more costly. So that's the advantages of that study. And, we did a lot of speed zone studies and set speed zones when I was with the Department of Transportation. And I did it for 35 years, and it always going to boil back down that people are going to drive what they think is safe and reasonable. About 85% of the drivers drive that way. There's always going to be some, that 15% that we allow enforcement to deal with. But when you start dropping between 85 down to 60 or 50, enforcement cannot take care of them. And that breeds disrespect for all the other speed limits that we have, because they can't do it. And then next thing you'll get is somebody's going to holler speed trap in this section. Be very careful. So that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with speed zones. That's been my experience.
You knew I'd say something. I totally have all the respect in the world for staff and what my colleagues have said here today. But what's really important when we look at these things is to look beyond what it is today and what it's moving towards. And when you take this corridor on 23rd Street and you look at the development and the redevelopment, the reinvigoration that's going on there, what it's becoming is a neighborhood business district. And we've got other neighborhood business districts in the city. We've got the Plaza District, we've got the Paseo, we have the recent Western Avenue corridor. And one of the common denominators with these is that we're reducing the speed limits to 25 miles per hour. Now, that may not be something that we can expect an effect immediately, but when you look at this corridor on 23rd, you look at the businesses that are there, and you look at the potential and the plans for the businesses that are coming, where my mind is and where I appreciate sharing opportunity for others to think so, we're also controlling people. We're controlling walkers and pedestrians in addition to vehicles. I wish that there was a way that we could come up with studies of how many people are walking and how many times they're running into each other to be humorous. But what I'm perceiving on 23rd Street is a neighborhood business district that's substantial, where people are going to be walking back and forth across the street at various points. At the last meeting here, this commission approved a mid-block crosswalk. So as the corridor develops and as it gets more crowded, and as the sentiment is I'm going to drive there and I'm going to park there and I'm going to stop, I'm not going to move my car again. I'm going to have dinner, I'm going to go to a show, I'm going to go shopping. We have to take into consideration pedestrians, and we have to take into consideration, in my opinion, very fast future growth of this area. So maybe people aren't going to obey a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit now, but maybe a year or a year and a half down the road, we're all going to praise the fact that we reduced that speed limit. And we talked about the condition. Stuart mentioned an example just a few minutes ago where there's a wide open road. and no matter what you post the speed limit, people are probably going to go even faster. This is a conditioned thing, in my view. It's a pedestrian center, more so than a vehicular center, I believe is the evolution going on there. I totally support reducing the speed limit to 25 for the consistency in these neighborhood business districts that we've been seeing here in the past few years where that's happening, the potential for what that corridor is going to be evolving into. And I hate to even bring it up, but God forbid we have a 30 or 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in these neighborhood business districts, and somebody gets hit by a car, and we all had liability. You know, if the speed limit's 25, there's going to be a ways to get people to slow down just by sheer fact that we have to. Maybe that didn't make any sense, but I tried. But I'm in favor of lowering this, and I think it's important that we do that. It's not a thoroughfare anymore. It's a neighborhood business district, and it even has neighborhoods behind the business district. Unlike what we looked at earlier today on, I believe it was Rockwell, there is very little to no commercial activity on those streets. I don't even think there's sidewalks. You know, so that, my eye says, get me where I'm going and get me where I'm going safely on a road the size that dictates the speed limit. This is evolving into a different thing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You know, one thing that seems like we've overlooked is that there were 128 collisions in the past year. Department of Public Safety and the records you provided us. 128. I don't remember another stretch of roadway and anything that we have ever discussed that there were that many collisions. It'd be interesting to know how many of them were speed related. I mean, it looks like from the survey you provided, most of them were at the big intersections where there are lights. But it seems like at some point we do have to put roadways on a diet to protect the development and the pedestrians. And it seems like this isn't asking too much. I mean, 5 miles per hour. Surely we could get used to that. And it seems reasonable to me to support the motion.
Commissioner Littlefield brought up an interesting thought. I don't have an opinion on this. I would just like to hear a little dialogue. Is the neighborhood aspect that is on the other side of the block, is there any relationship balancing act, any give and take that needs to be considered here if the driver's not happy with the speed conditions on 23rd Street? Are they just going to go around it and then reroute their traffic onto the neighborhood streets that are just on either side of 23rd Street? Because I think it is important to think about the neighborhoods that are now going to be bookmarking the activity, I mean, are bookending, I should say. Is there any theory, precedent, thought on if we're not happy with what we're doing on 23rd Street, that the driver will take the path of least resistance and go into the neighborhood? I don't have an opinion on that, but I'd like to I want to feel like we've considered everything here.
Isn't this one of the most busy stretches of road in the city?
Well, for
as far as traffic volume?
Yes, it is one of the busier, clearly.
Okay. And isn't this the most convenient way to the Capitol?
If you just look, if you were to presume based on the traffic volumes that it's probably got a lot of Capitol-bound traffic, I'd say yes.
Okay. And I agree and support the neighborhood businesses, but this particular stretch of road has the highest volume of traffic in the city, and it's going to affect a lot of drivers, what we decide here today. And I understand that it may be coming, but I also understand it's about the only way to get to the Capitol due to the highway. It has close to many side streets to the Capitol.
There's several ways to the Capitol.
Right, but I mean, at this point in time, the majority of the traffic going to the Capitol is running down 23rd. And so every one of those drivers will be affected by our decision today. And if those drivers the expectation is a higher limit than the 25, that's my concern.
And Rob, on the neighborhood business districts, the plaza, and the transformation that's going on with Western right now, I think in both those cases, we've got one lane of traffic going each direction. And to me, that actually sounds like a pretty positive development for 23rd Street, at least a portion of it, say from Chartel over to Robinson, to take it down to one lane. And then I think it's credible to have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I think it also enhances the walkability, which I think is part of the desire, part of the long-term vision, is the walkability of this area. But that's not where we are today. We've got 2 lanes, and I think the evidence that we've got from speed studies and the scientific data tells us that the driver expectation is that you get to go 30, 35 miles an hour through here. I think we're going to be wasting our time to reduce the speed to less than 30 miles an hour. I don't know if we can within this item that's before us, but I think it'd be reasonable to suggest reducing it consistently all the way across to 30. I don't think 25 miles an hour is going to do us any good.
If I may? Its uniqueness compared to Western Avenue Plaza District and the Paseo District is that it does have a boulevard. It's got a very fine, very nice, very attractive tree-lined boulevard, which is a traffic calming element in itself, for one. It's a matter, you'd have to enforce it. You know, we have applications come before us in neighborhoods all the time where we may not have a solution for them, but we'll send a police officer out to give tickets to a few folks. You know, I'm a believer that a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is something that a majority of people are going to recognize and respect. And if somebody needs to get to the Capitol and they can't get down Broadway Extension or whatever route that, you know, I've driven this city many times where I've done the crow flies, and then I've swung all the way around in that loop that's 60 miles an hour, and I get there so much quicker taking the 10-mile route than I do the 2-mile route. So it's a path of least resistance then to me for that. And leave a little bit earlier. You know, what's wrong with that? I, from a very artistic point of view, am supporting this 25-mile-an-hour speed limit because of what it's forming into, what it is becoming. I think that a higher speed limit, or keeping the speed limit where it is, or going to 30 miles an hour, sends a message to pedestrians, you can't walk here. It's for cars. It's not for people. And that's my opinion with regard to your comment. It's 25 miles an hour in the neighborhood, too. It's no faster in the neighborhood. And the neighborhoods, if you've driven through them, there are stop signs all along the way. There are cars parked on both sides of the streets. As far as I know, the majority of both the neighborhoods on the north side and the south side of 23rd Street don't have no parking any time zones and things like that. So the physical obstacles to maintain 25 miles an hour in those neighborhoods exist. So it's just a matter of respecting what the city is trying to evolve into, focusing on giving respect to pedestrians, allowing an opportunity for these kinds of business districts to evolve so.
I got it. If it's going to get to 25, we could always do the speed study when it gets there, when the speed study says it's 25 instead of 10. That's an alternative if it takes us 6 months or a year, because it doesn't take that long to do a speed study and then come back to this commission, if that's what you're saying. I have a hard time setting a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on a major arterial carrying 20,000 cars a day when that's the minimum we got in our school zones. And just not too many years ago, when did you raise the minimum in your school zone, or the maximum in the school zone, from 20 to 25? Because you couldn't get compliance at 20. So there's a lot to the speed study that tells us a lot of things, and I just cannot see setting a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on a major arterial. I just can't, not until a speed study shows me that.
Isn't this the same stretch where we just put in the pedestrian? So that's that's where my brain's going is, if I'm driving and I don't want to have to deal with this mid-block thing, I'm going to hop over into that neighborhood. Not that I'm going to, but are we taking away the perceived value of the 30 possibly, given the incentive to stay in the 30? Because if it is 25 here and I've got a mid-block and it's 25 in someone's neighborhood without a mid-block, someone may choose to take the non-mid-block route. I'm just thinking out loud. So, because there's a lot of cars with a lot of smart drivers who are going to figure out how to beat the system on that, possibly. I don't mean that insulting, but they're going to be strategizing, how do I get where I'm going as quickly as I need to be there. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a break from up here. I believe somebody else wishes to talk. Maybe we can get a little bit more. We have your name, your address. You have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out a form.
So Jonathan Dotson, 1220 Northwest 20th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm a property owner in the tower, and I live about 5 blocks from there. So a couple things. One is I just wanted to comment before. I have a couple letters from tenants and landowners who emailed me prior to the meeting to give their support for a lowered speed limit. But there is a misnomer, and lots of studies have been done on the fact that decreased speed limits actually increase throughput of traffic. So we like to think we typically associate with increased speed limit increases efficiency. But there's been lots of studies done showing the exact opposite, that when you lower speed limit, it actually allows cars to get through at a much more efficient and quicker pace. And so I can forward multiple studies that have been done on that, but ULI has put quite a bit of study into that, as well as some other urban reports. So I would comment that just because we're talking about lowering the speed limit, not to 20, but to 25, that doesn't mean that cars are going to have a harder time getting through. It's funny, when I ride my bike on 25th Street, which is dangerous in and of itself, on the sidewalk, mind you, I see cars speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down, and I can usually beat them along 23rd Street, versus if you just could maintain a more consistent, slower speed, you actually get through quicker. So I only say that to say that was an important thing to note. And the second thing is to say, has been commented, of where is this block going? And we're creating a retail district with the Tower Theater coming online in the next 3 or 4 months, but then also with the recent purchase of the bank building on 23rd Street, right across the street from Orange Leaf and Pizza 23. That is being turned into a retail bar and restaurant concept, if you've seen those plans. We're owners of Joe's Pawn Shop, which will be converted into a retail center. And so this is becoming a place where we really have to say, if we had a street in Oklahoma City where we couldn't just think about cars, but also pedestrians and bicyclists, this is the place we have to do it. And so a couple letters here. This is from Daniel Che, who owns All About Ya on the Western Corridor, but also Che Korean Restaurant on 23rd, and he will have a location in the Tower Theater. He says, as the owner of Che Modern Korean and a future bun shop business at the Tower Theater on 23rd, we view 23rd to be a value area of business. However, the desire to do more business is a bit mitigated by the fact that 23rd Street still serves as a place to drive through rather than a place to drive to. Because the future of our growth is based upon 23rd becoming a safer and more walkable street for pedestrians, it is with the utmost respect that we request 23rd Street to become 25-mile-an-hour zone. Additionally, as a trustee of the Western Avenue Association Business District, I can attest to the value of slowing down areas and specific business hubs to the benefit of the community for those who live to do business there. It's with hope that you'll afford the same opportunity to 23rd Street. And then this is from Keith and Heather Paul, who own Cheevers and Drake and Tucker, so they're a predominant retail and land owner on 23rd. They said, to whom it may concern, my opinion regarding traffic base on Northwest 23rd while owning property and operating multiple businesses over the past 16 years in this area is that automobile traffic speed should be decreased dramatically. The primary focus should be from Classen to Broadway. This area of Northwest 23rd also is our best chance to provide a much-needed walkable district. Thank you.
All right, sir, did you have an input? Sure. May I have your name, your address? You have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out a form.
Scott Marsh, 4129 Northwest 58th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73112. I'm actually run the company Level Productions, which is going to be the leasee in the Tower Theater, as well as Savings and Loan Bar next to it, and we also own and operate several other things in Bricktown and other locations. Outside of what everybody's brought up so far, I'd like to point out that everything has been based on the car studies, and nobody's really brought up the walkability studies and our city's need and want for the walkability of this area. So I think that's something that really needs to play into everyone's minds as we move forward as a city, is looking at kind of what this corridor is bringing and why there is so much traffic there. A lot of the traffic is there not only from the Capitol, but also from the businesses that are there and the businesses that are coming in, as well as, obviously the surrounding areas that people live in. So I think that as you get down there and you see what happens with the Open Streets movement when we close down 23rd, and you see how many people show up for that and how much business is driven there, that there can be a happy medium to be met to find that speed limit that creates the safety that everybody's looking for from a tenant side, and also the ability to move quickly and efficiently from the Capitol to Western, Classen, et cetera. So I think that's just something I wanted to point out, that although we've spoken a lot about cars and the feasibility of getting cars up and down the road, will people respect the speed limits or not? Obviously we can't tell the future and say, yes, everyone will respect it, but I think that we've seen in a lot of different areas, especially Bricktown, where we have a lot of business, that those speed limits are enforced and that people do pay attention to them. So I think if we can bring that to the forefront of the committee and say, let's find this happy medium, I think everybody wins in a scenario where there is a reduced speed. Obviously, the pedestrian walkway helps a lot, and we can move forward in a much safer direction for bikes, cars, and people. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go through here one more time around. Let's start with the motioner to Commissioner Schuline. Do you have any comments?
I do want to say, to support what Jonathan and the other gentleman spoke up about, using the speed study to justify a higher speed limit is a little bit, to me, like the tail wagging the dog. I mean, this district is emerging and evolving around pedestrians. And I think it's important that we respect the fact that this is where the district is wanting to go, and give them a break and just try it. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I really think the need about the safety of pedestrians and respect the business owners that are coming in and investing a great deal of their money to make this district better. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay, let's go to the seconder, to Commissioner Littlefield.
Mr. Dodson, I've got a couple of questions for you. If you could come forward, I'd appreciate it. Has there been any letter of protest or neighborhood group on either side of this corridor that's expressed protest of reducing the speed limit?
No.
No. Is there any business owner along this corridor that has protested or sent a letter against reducing the speed limit?
No.
Is there anybody here that signed up to speak in protest of lowering the speed limit, or any letters that staff has received protesting it? Thank you very much.
Is a petition required for this type of request?
Not for an arterial, no.
Okay. Do we have any more comments? Yes, sir.
Same question. Has there been any road users you've been contacted to see if they would have protest lowering the speed limit? A group of employees groups that's working at the Capitol that live back this way, have you contacted any of them to see if they would approve lowering the speed limit?
I think the city did when they put it out,
when
publicly notified everyone. So
In this particular case, the only notification that was made was posted on the, here at City Hall and on the city's website. That was the only notification
yes, sir.
Put out.
Which is a public website. That's how I knew about it. I think that so.
Well, and there was the individuals that were involved with the original request received a direct email.
Okay, which would have been Brian
and yourself.
I didn't receive one.
Okay, may have the wrong person. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else on the horseshoe here want to talk? Okay, so we go to item 5E. We have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to modify sub 1 to make that speed limit go from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, and for sub 2 to change that speed limit from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. And this motion has been seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Item is approved. Okay. We go to item 6, comments from citizens. Anybody else want to speak? Okay, we go to reports and other items from traffic commissioners, et cetera. Commissioner Witcher?
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield?
The Traffic Calming Subcommittee is meeting after this meeting to review the Omaha, Nebraska plan, and we will let you know what comes from there. Nothing else. Thank you.
And we go to Commissioner Hale.
Nothing to report,
Commissioner
sir.
Schuline.
Just want to remind everybody the arts festivals this week is if you didn't already notice. Come on down. It's going to be a really good event. 50th anniversary. That's pretty impressive.
We go to Commissioner Miller.
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner George.
No, just, I think we need to follow up on 23rd Street, though, and to see if that second stretch really, in my opinion, would have been the part that needed to be 25. It's still going to be at 30, and because that seems where most of the business is. It's still going to be 30 miles an hour. And where you moved it from 35 to 30, and so it seems like in front of a lot of those restaurants and things, that is the area that should have been 25, and not from Classen to, Western. That's one little block area there. But anyway, I just think that needs to continue to look at, see if that needs to be adjusted back a little lower, 25 the whole way, or maybe that 25 needs to go back up to 30. So it was a big decision today. I think it's going to affect 60,000 people a day, and probably only, a couple of thousand go to the restaurants. So there's 58,000 people that aren't stopping on that mile or 2 miles that are going to be affected. So I think we just need to continue to look at it, for sure.
Well, I just want to throw out, we did the same thing out on North Broadway. Is that what it's called? No.
Western Avenue.
No. Last year, Broadway, we moved it from a 4-lane to a 3-lane because they wanted those angled parking and to increase parking, and that slowed it all down in that area too. And that was a major output, especially. We changed that to a 1-lane out, 2-lane to come into the city, and it was going through that same process. Do we want to make things walkable, businesses, make people feel comfortable to stop and do all that? Where are we going as a city? And I know that the city itself, over the 5, 10, 15 years, a lot of studies about walkability and all this stuff. We changed all the roadways from 1-ways to 2-ways, just to go down this road. And like we've talked about before, when there is a problem, people will find another solution. And if it's too much of an effort where they're going, they'll find another better way to make things happen. And we just have to weigh that. And I think we did a good job today weighing it. And sometimes it goes a little bit more left and right than left. But as long as we keep that all in mind, that we are concerned about traffic, we are concerned with walkers, bicycles, we are concerned about local growth and all that. And if we just keep weighing all that stuff, we will always hopefully do the right thing.
Great.
Okay? And Commissioner Yonko, nothing? Sir? Nothing? Council? Council, nothing? Staff?
I have nothing else to add.
Okay. That kind of does it. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George. Votes, please. Okay, and we are adjourned.